Meta specifically, and I didn't realize that Meta laid off 11,000 people. I think everyone's like very fixated on Facebook. And dude, half of Meta's employees are Asian. Like as of this year, half of them were Asian in regards to like the entire company, which is wild.
I mean, 50% Asian, that I feel like that's the number that Asians Against Affirmative Action want for Asian people.
Yeah.
We need this, but for Harvard, that's...
Yeah.
Welcome to the Politically Asian podcast, where two Asian American comedians talking about politics and the Asian American community in hopes of getting more Asians to talk about politics. We're coming at you live from Brooklyn, New York. My name is Aaron Yin. My pronouns are he, him, and you can find me on social media at Aaron Flarin. That's AARONFLARIN. And my co-host...
Hey, my name is Jerry Lim. My pronouns are they, them, and you can find me across the internet at Jerryaki. That's GERRIEYAKI. And before we go any further, we just want to leave a note that there will be no episode next week. That's November 29th. We will be resting and giving thanks, I guess. And the next episode will be December 6th. So we will talk to you then. Yeah, sounds good.
Amazing. So before we get into the episode, as you all know, we'll do our opening segment, Practice What You Preach. So on this podcast, Jerry and I, we talk about politics, but it's also important to do things. So each week, Jerry and I share one thing that we did related to politics and organizing. So I'll go first this week. This week, I'm not going to lie, it was a little bit light. Yesterday, there was a picket again in front of the Museum of Chinese America, but the main difference was that this one was organized by public school teachers in New York City. So it was like a teachers educators day, picket day. There was like over 30 people who showed up. It was great. My small action on this was just getting two teachers to sign on to the a pledge to boycott this museum. One of them is Michael Sagarolo, who does listen to the podcast. He teaches at NYU. The other person also does, but that was my small thing, just having both of them sign on to this letter to take classes on field trips to MoCA, to not send students on assignments to MoCA, and to just respect the picket line. Because MoCA does get a few field trips and also just random students who get assigned there. So that's our response to that whole situation.
All right.
That was me this week.
All right. Shout out, Michael.
Yeah.
I think that's really still pretty cool though. To boycott or ask teachers to boycott a museum. I feel like, I don't know, a field trip is such an easy win for a teacher, and to be I'm going to be inclusive and bring my class to this Asian museum, or whatever.
No, I think it's cool because the teachers, they also wrote their own letter as part of the pledge, as a full open letter. And part of the letter just talks about how one of the main reasons we're doing this is because MoCA accepted these jail money funds, right? And so the teachers, they wrote, we should support spending for schools, not jails, to end the school to prison pipeline. I'm like, wow, that's an interesting connection right there. I like it. The city is cutting education funds, including early childhood education funds, and shifting $11 billion to new jails in New York City. And I'm like, that's a really cool tie-in between the schools and the jails that only a teacher could talk about and vouch for like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's a common when people talk about abolitionist abolitionist frameworks, they always talk about what NYPD and those kinds of funds, criminal justice funds, could be going to instead, right? It could be going into stuff that helps prevent the need for criminal justice, right? Getting people mental health support and housing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's cool. You said teachers, but Michael is a professor, no?
Right.
Did you mean professors, or do you mean like high school
Oh,
kids?
it's both. I mean,
It's
it was
both?
broadly
Okay.
labeled Educators Picket Day. And on this letter,
Wholesome.
there are a lot of teachers from K through 12, like a lot of different public schools in New York City. I think PS2 is a big one in I guess Lower East Side or Chinatown. A lot of teachers from there showed up. But yeah, just also universities, whether TAs or full professors, just a very broad educators label because all of these people will sometimes do these field trips to Mocha.
It's cool that it's like, it sounds like it's also local schools, like in the neighborhood.
Oh,
and
yeah, for sure.
I feel like that could be a fun lesson within itself. It's like, like, Mr. So-and-so, why don't we go to the museum for a field trip? And then, the teacher's like, oh, this is a great time to teach kids about gentrification and like,
Yeah.
like criminal justice, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking at I guess for any teachers or anyone who teaches who's interested in signing this, there is a link. It's tinyurl.com/educators together. That will bring you to the forum. But yeah, I'm looking at this list again. There's people from PS58, PS30, PS2, PS7. I guess all this stuff doesn't mean much if you're not
Yeah,
in New York
I was
City.
like, all right.
PS just means public school, and so these are all just different locations. Yeah, also Pratt, NYU, Rutgers,
Okay.
C University, CUNY. Yeah, it's a pretty cool team.
Cool. All right.
How was your week?
Yeah, so I want to talk about DSA, of course. So I went to. I like that that's enough to just like make us laugh.
Yeah.
This is your first time listening to the pod. I have been doing what can be described as a social experiment. I paid for DSA membership like a while back when I was feeling super sad and disenchanted about the state of the world, and I've been trying to make the most out of my membership by actually attending meetings, right? So I was like, I'm interested in healthcare. Let me start with that. And I've wormed my way down into the working group, which is the meetings are meant for like to organize actually doing something, blah, 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 blah. Okay, just like a big sigh. There were a whopping 4 people at this meeting. Again, just want to remind everyone that DSA says that they have a membership count of 90,000. That was taken like last year. 4 people, including me, so 3 other people that were, as far as I understood it, white men. And that was after like, like when people like wait to start a meeting, they're like, we're gonna wait for people to trickle in. We waited for like 15 minutes
Wow,
and no one else trickled in. Yeah. To be fair, there were multiple DSA meetings that day. There were multiple branches, working groups, whatever, that were meeting. Okay, sure. Overall, it was interesting in the sense that I, continued to see the structure. I thought it was interesting because the working group chair, I think that's what the person is called, asked our opinions in regard to like setting up times to phone bank and Canvas. And I was just like, you have no accountability system here to make sure like if we say like, oh, December 9th, and then none of us show up on December 9th, what was the point of doing any of this?
Yeah.
So there was that. I think the most fruitful thing that I got out of it was they had, surprise, more slideshows. And Aaron, I think you'll find this really interesting. Like they were talking about the New York Health Act, and apparently there is a lot of union opposition to the New York Health Act or any kind of single payer. And it's because for a lot of pretty much all unions, more affordable health care than like the average employee, non-unionized employee, is like a really major benefit that was like hard won by unions, blah, blah, blah. So getting single payer would eliminate this as a benefit for a union, and they would no longer be able to use it as like a recruitment tool or like be able to negotiate better terms in their healthcare. So I thought that was really interesting to see that unions were against single payer.
Yeah, I mean that's the trend that everyone's going towards now, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me a lot, especially in New York City. One of the biggest unions is 1199 SEIU, so that's specifically for a healthcare workers branch of SEIU. they're really big. There's this one article that was called like 1199 SEIU, the union that ruled New York. They have like a large influence. Like, again, just like DSA, tens of thousands of members. Bill de Blasio came from there, if that speaks any volumes to how good or bad they are. But yeah, very traditional. And, you know, we have our own fight. They have their own fight also against home care attendants and now this. So it doesn't surprise me that unions are more traditional, and I would even say a little bit conservative, the very large ones that boast about how many thousands of members they have.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I guess, like, I don't know, the slideshow was good at, like, you know, laying out an argument against the union's opposition. It was just saying, like, if you're saving more on healthcare by, like, not having to pay for it at all, then you could use your dues for, like, you know, just negotiating for boosting wages, salaries, blah, 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 because employers no longer get to complain about the high health insurance costs when negotiating union contracts. So, yeah, I just want to put out the counter argument, and there are definitely unions that support the New York Health Act, but, like, I just thought it was very surprising because it was a rather large section for to combat union opposition. So, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So that was my week.
Okay, so it sounds like there aren't that many people, you know, not to judge a lot about this working group based on one time. So I guess my question for you is still, will you go back?
Yeah, I think I do want to, like, give canvassing, maybe not right now because it's fucking freezing. I feel like New York got cold really fast and all of a sudden. Maybe not do, like, canvassing right now, but I'll give phone banking a try, maybe. Like, I get so many texts from DSA. Like, I had to give them my Google number instead of my phone number because I was just like, y'all are sending me so many texts. Like, I'm never making this mistake again.
That's really funny. Cool. Yeah. Well, you know, as always, proud of you for continuing to show up. even
doing the work. We're doing the work, right? Showing up is the hardest thing, I think. You can donate money, but showing up is the hardest thing.
Absolutely. 4 people is truly not that many, though. That's pretty surprising. Yeah. All right, let's get into the news for this week. So this week in Asian American politics, we are starting first with a Pacific island called Tuvalu. So one of the headlines for this topic is Tuvalu is set to become the world's first digital nation as climate crisis worsens. And for context, Tuvalu, it's a small group of islands that's about 2,000 miles east of Australia. It's like the same distance between Hawaii and California. Jerry, what is one thought that you had about this topic?
I thought it was pretty wild. The whole metaverse thing has mostly been a joke to me, so I feel like this is really legitimizing it. And it makes me sad because, you know, with Twitter doing whatever is happening to Twitter, I feel like everyone was trying to find an alternate platform to jump to. And not once, you know, like, everyone's like, oh, maybe we'll go back to Tumblr, or like, someone bring back MySpace. Not once did anyone joke about going back to Facebook. So, yeah.
It did annoy me a little bit that Facebook would benefit from it, but overall, it does just seem so, it seems dystopian, but it's happening right now. There was this one line that they were saying, Tuvalu, at the moment, up to 40% of its capital district is already underwater when the tides are high.
Yeah.
And the entire country is forecasted to be underwater latest by the end of the century. So 70-ish years is the latest they're predicting.
Yeah, I saw a quote from, I think it's the foreign minister who delivered the statement, and he said something about, like, doing this will remind our children and grandchildren what our land once was. Bro, that is so fucking sad. Like, that's, I can't even imagine. And I feel like the Philippines something similar could happen because it's also an island nation, and you know, climate change. I don't know. It's scary.
Yeah. For me, it seems like the people who are on those islands for now will have to, you know, maybe go to a different island and resettle because they will be displaced. But for me, it was also like, wow, it kind of changes what the definition of a nation means, because you're living in another country, but you're saying you're this other country that's now underwater.
Yeah. It's, oh, damn. That's pretty wild to think about. It's like a literal Atlantis, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was also just thinking, like, locally, New York City at some point is also going to be flooded and maybe completely underwater. And it's like, everyone may move to, like, Jersey, for example, right? And then it's like, I'm just like, wow, it's so weird to, be in another place, but call yourself a place that doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, look, I mean, as long as Staten Island goes first,
yeah.
fine. Yeah, but see, like, with, and I know you and I are not native New Yorkers, but there's that whole thing about, like, born and raised New Yorker, blah, blah, blah. Who's a true New Yorker? I feel like that's only going to get worse if we're, like, on, we have to digitize New York and put it on the metaverse. Like,
yeah. I know. I mean, a lot of questions of, like, authenticity and labels.
Yeah.
When I heard that this entire country was also going to be digitized, I immediately thought about digital risks as well. Like, what happens if a hacker just deletes the island? Does that make sense? I'm like, that's such a weird thing to think about. I don't know. It's like the first time something like this has happened. I don't even have, like, the right comparisons. I'm thinking, like, islands on Minecraft. I'm thinking, just like all these loose analogies, because it's weird to have an entire country just only be online.
Yeah, I will say it does remind me of, like, when we were, like, in the heart of the pandemic, could not go outside, all that. All we really had were, like, the digital communities online. I will say it feels a lot like that. Or, like, when I was living in Alabama, and it was, like, the spin-offs of the Subtle Asian Traits Facebook group. So we had, like, Subtle Queer Asians, and then there were, like, 5 different types of those groups. I feel like that was really important, because, like, it's like, queer Asian people. I feel like I never see this in Alabama. So I feel like it's something similar to that, but to the whole concept of, like, a country online in that same space, like a country as a Facebook group, more or less, is, like, really, that's really wild.
Yeah. And the response overall, there was this other article that you mentioned, and the title is "In a First, comma, Rich countries agree to pay for climate damages in poor nations." The tagline is, "After 30 years of deadlock, a new UN climate agreement aims to pay developing countries for loss and damage caused by global warming. But huge questions remain about how it'll work." What was one thought you had on this response?
The US and the EU were hesitating, and, like, I feel like they're the main culprits of all of this. And it's like, they were like, we didn't want to be legally liable for the greenhouse gas emissions. And it's like, so you guys know you're the problem, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
what did you think?
I was like, they're just going to drag this out until everybody's dead. Like, it took 30 years to come to this agreement, and all this agreement came to was that a fund would be created to help other countries. But the thing about this fund is that it's toothless. Like, there's no requirement that wealthy countries actually deposit money into the fund. And in fact, as far as climate change goes, we were supposed to donate like 100 billion per year to the climate crisis, and we've been off by like 30 billion, 40 billion every single year. So
cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's
great. Yeah, that's why I don't like the United Nations, and like this was at the climate change conference. I imagine that's like an international thing. First off, it's called the Climate Change Conference, but the abbreviation is COP. Nothing good can come from an abbreviation of COP.
COP, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, like when it's the wealthy countries at fault, like who is holding them accountable? Like who's gonna put a gun to their head, right?
Yeah,
like no
exactly.
one.
Yeah, like it's weird because the U.S. is a big player inside the UN, and they're not gonna hold themselves accountable. Like
right. They're gonna hold the gun on themselves. Come on.
Exactly. It's maybe something like the Spider-Man meme where they're like pointing
at each other.
They're all pointing at each other. Yeah,
man.
It just feels like it's going to get passed around to different countries and nothing's ever going to happen. And meanwhile, Tuvalu and other islands are sinking.
Yeah. Awful. Just, I Awful. On that note, we'll move on to our next story. So if you've been watching any news, I feel like you may have noticed that there's been a mass wave of tech layoffs. There's a website called layoffs.fyi. It's been compiling all the layoffs from tech companies. You can even filter by year. And so far this year, over 130,000 people that worked in tech have been laid off. And a lot of these folks are on H-1B visas. So if you don't know what an H-1B visa is, it means that you have specialized knowledge, usually a bachelor's degree or some equivalent of work experience, and your employer will sponsor you to come to the United States. It costs roughly like $10K. But if your employment ever ceases, like a lot of these folks, then you have 60 days to get a new job or you will be deported. And I should specify that it's a new job with an employer that will sponsor your visa. So really concerning. Aaron, what are your thoughts about all of this?
Yeah, so it's like they can't even find a random job at like a restaurant, for example. It has to be a very specific company that can give them a sponsorship. Overall, this situation is very much like, I don't know, 60 days is such a short period of time, 2 months. It's like when I thought about any other thing that had a number as a reference, I thought like 90-day fiance. And this is like 60-day job.
60-day visa.
60-day visa. Just stressful as fuck. On Twitter, there was this one photo that was going viral of all these Twitter employees standing next to Elon Musk, the ones who were left. And almost all of them were either East Asian or South Asian. I would even specifically say either Chinese or Indian.
Cool.
And it's like, I know y'all are not staying there for the love of the game, right? That's for the love of the visa, right? That's the main thing. So it's like it feels like some form of I don't know, like indentured servitude or something like that. Like you don't want to be there. It's absolute shit. Twitter 2.0 requires extremely long hours and whatever, but you have to.
Yeah, I thought it was really wild to research H-1B visas. I read an article that said it affects 71% of tech workers in Silicon Valley.
Whoa.
Which was like, oh, it's like reading the whole Qatar thing all over again with like most, migrant workers and foreign workers, that kind of thing. But I will say that maybe I'm just not getting the numbers right in terms of how much it costs, because like $10K to hire one talented employee does not really feel like too much money when you're a tech company that gets millions and millions in funding. Do you feel like that's fair, or am I like blowing that out of proportion?
So just to understand this, so tech companies have to pay $10K as part of the sponsorship?
Yeah, like each employee is like roughly like $10K, and then if you want to like premium process that person's visa or something. Yeah, isn't that wild? There's a premium processing fee.
Like a fast pass.
Yeah, no, literally, it's like a guaranteed 15 days. If you pay 2.5K, which again, objectively does not feel like a lot of money, especially if you are working as a software engineer at like a big tech company that has millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah. Maybe it depends on the company. So Twitter right now, like they could use the 10,000 per person.
Yeah, you're right.
Meta, I don't know, right? Like I have no idea about what Meta is and how they're doing money wise. But Twitter, I could see, because they laid off like 3,000 people, right? Or like 4,000 people.
They laid off 50% of their work. Their workforce.
It's like 4,000 times 10,000. Is that
adds
40,
up? You're right.
40 million? Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
On the spot math. Anyways,
okay, so I couldn't be a software engineer. Got it.
Yeah, I didn't know about the cost of that, so that was news to me just now. But I was on one of the articles we were reading. It was just a breakdown of who has H-1Bs.
Yeah, and
they were saying that Indian nationals, they make up 75% of all H-1B petitioners, followed by mainland Chinese nationals who have 12%.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I guess to put some more stakes on this, someone was saying as of March, the wait time for Indian nationals to get a green card has went up to 96 years.
What?
Yeah, that's what, like going back to the whole Tuvalu topic. It's like it's gonna be too late. Like by the time this happens, you will be dead. Like it's so wild. So like these are the kinds of stakes that workers are dealing with right now.
Yeah, that's freaking wild. One of the articles that we had in our doc discussed Meta specifically, and I didn't realize that Meta laid off 11,000 people. I think everyone's like very
Whoa.
fixated on Facebook. And dude, half of Meta's employees are Asian. Like as of this year, half of them were Asian in regards to like the entire company, which is
Yeah.
wild. And there was like a story about how someone moved from India to Canada to work for Meta and then was laid off 2 days later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 50% Asian, that I feel like that's the number that Asians against affirmative action want for Asian people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we need this, but for Harvard, that's
Yeah, yeah,
that's the
yeah.
argument. Yeah, I remember that story at the beginning. It's just really wild. It's also just destroys the foundation of what a lot of, let's say, like Asian Americans and Asian parents want for their kids. For example, it's like, oh, work in tech, it pays a lot, it's stable, it's like the new doctor. But now, tech is not that stable. Doctors have so much debt and mental health crisis, and
Yeah.
it's like it's just like nothing is that good of a financial option right now.
We should improve the system somewhat.
Yeah. Hey, if you're still listening to this podcast right now, thank you for making it this far. Just want to do a quick shout out, quick plug. If you like our podcast, please take a few seconds on your phone to go to Apple or Spotify and click 5 stars. That really helps us out. And if you really want to support us, also you can feel free to donate on Patreon at patreon.com/politicallyasian. We're currently raising money to provide episode transcriptions, get a video editor, and more. All right, back to the episode.
It was interesting to read about Meta, though, because apparently the Zuck has been an advocate for immigration reform. And it's just like, of course you have. It's like, 50% of your workers are Asian? No wonder. That's because you have an Asian wife. It's because you have an Asian wife and your company is also, in a way, an Asian wife. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's not doing it for, progressiveness. It's just to save his ass. Like, it's for the
It's to make
bottom
money.
line.
It's to make money.
For money. All right. Well, speaking of money, we have an even bigger story involving tech and money. It has to do with the collapse of a crypto exchange called FTX. We're going to try to keep this as big and dumbed down as possible because there are a lot of tree level details. For some background, FTX, first of all, it stands for Future Exchanges. Future Exchanges, it's a place where people can buy and sell crypto. And I guess that's where I'll start. I guess in summary, it collapsed because they were lending out a lot of money. At some point, all the people wanted their money back and they weren't able to pay them back. So then it tanked. That is a super abridged version of what happened.
Yeah, that's super abridged. Holy shit! Like there are no details in that.
I mean, in my mind, I'm like, it's like the GameStop thing, but with crypto. It collapsed.
It's different. It's different. It's different.
Anyway, Jerry, what is? We'll kind of peel back the onion on this one,
Yeah,
one
okay,
layer
okay.
at a time, Shrek style. Jerry, what is one thought you had about this whole thing?
People should have known it was kind of sketcho, not just because it's crypto, but the biggest red flag y'all should have had was that it's based in the Bahamas. What the fuck? Are you kidding me? No, like it's based in the Bahamas. Before that, it was Hong Kong, and I think the founder was like, yeah, they're a little less regulatory over there, and it's like, I wonder why.
Exactly.
So yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. The location of the company does matter a lot. I will say, I think one of the juicier parts of this story was FTX was lending out a lot of money specifically to this research firm called Alameda Research, and the CEO of that research group was a girl named like Caroline
Ellison, I think.
Caroline Ellison, who is dating the CEO of FTX, the Futures Exchange. Like the two CEOs were like dating each other, and he was lending her a lot of money. Terrible financial story, but kind of hot romantic story.
Is someone's gonna make a movie about this in 50 years? Is what I'm hearing. Netflix.
Love conquers all, even like $32 billion. I'm like, yeah. What else did you think about this?
I mean, it's just. So the reason why we're covering this, we should, besides the fact that it used to be in Hong Kong, there are two Indian American people who were pretty high up in the inner circle with the CEO, and then the person who was going to buy out FTX was the CEO of Binance, which is like this competitor exchange, and it was this guy named Changpeng Zhao. And then he found out, like, he took a look at the financials before he bought it. And then he's like, this is not a good idea. I'm not buying it. And then that's when the government regulators like, we should look into this. So bad.
Yeah, I thought that part was so funny. It's also just so funny how names are anglicized. Okay, we'll go with Chang Peng, maybe. Anyways, this guy, he is the CEO of a rival exchange fund. And he was saying how Sam, who's the CEO of FTX, would constantly like talk shit about him, basically, to different politicians and
to regulators specifically.
To regulators, yeah. And so they're like, "Oh, don't trust this Asian guy. He's not good." And so I feel like part of this was like a bit of a karma exercise, or a bit of like a master class in fuck around, find out, right? Like,
okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
You kind of shat on him for a lot, and so then he called you out, and that's when he kind of exposed all the smoke and mirrors going on at FTX.
Yeah. I mean, people are saying it's like destabilizing crypto as a whole, like blah, blah, blah. All these like celebrities are in like a lawsuit or something because they endorsed FTX. And I was just like, I feel like y'all, like, I just don't see like people like Naomi Osaka and Tom Brady. Like, I don't see them using crypto. Like, I don't, why... What good is a celebrity endorsement in regards to the crypto? You know what I mean? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, everyone is really, really mad now, and they're doing this whole Athletic Avengers lawsuit against FTX. So it has Shaq O'Neal, Naomi Osaka, Tom Brady, of course. Also, one of the guys from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm like, these are some really big names, and yeah, I'm like, they must be really mad if they're doing a public lawsuit like this.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of when Kendall Jenner and like all those influencers were like advertised for Fyre Festival, and then they were in a lawsuit, and people are like, why did you lead us astray, Kendall? And she was like, I can't like vet everything, you can only try so hard, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. I was like, that's probably what happened here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but this guy, the CEO of FTX, his name's Sam again. Sam, dude, he was schmoozing with like Bill Clinton, Elon Musk, apparently Cory Booker, and he donated like over 40 million himself to just like Democratic campaigns. So he was really trying to just like get in there in terms of people who can make decisions, like policy.
I thought it was interesting that he donated to Democrats, because I always felt like when I think crypto people, I think libertarians or Republicans.
Yeah, that's true. Especially the whole anti-regulation thing, right?
Yeah.
Like less government. That is true. That's really funny. Maybe it's just because Democrats are like in control of like Congress now. I see. Maybe. Yeah, that's a great point.
To be clear, he also donated to Republicans, just like not nearly as much.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, but it's very suspicious.
Yeah, but yeah, just a lot of people who traded on FTX or bought their currency on the exchange called like FTT something token. They lost out a lot. It truly does remind me of like GameStop stock and Robinhood, and a lot of people are left holding the bag. And
okay, that's a fair comparison in that sense. I was like, the mechanics behind it, no.
just a lot of like like regular people just losing money on this, and the CEO being the one messing around with all their money.
Do you think it's going to be the end of, do you think like this is the mark of like a downward spiral in crypto, or like maybe not even a mark, just like another milestone on the way on the way down.
Absolutely. Like, how many more straws does it take to break the crypto camel? I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
This has to be something, right? Like, there's the whole like NFT bear market thing, and now there's this, and I haven't heard from a single NFT person in like at least half a year now. They used to be
true,
like, yeah, they used to be like, oh, we're gonna make it, we're all gonna make it, wag me, and now there's like nothing. So we'll see. I think the highlight of this story still is the fuck around, find out moment. I just thought that was so funny because he also had this quote: "We won't pretend to make love after divorce. We won't support people who lobby against other industry players behind their backs." So I'm just like, that's a hot quote right there. We won't pretend to make love after divorce. He said, like, we're not doing that, fake happy parent shit. Like, to support
clean breakup.
Clean breakup. Fuck that shit. That was a great moment right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on to our next topic. So if you're a Swiftie, you may have tried to get a ticket to Taylor's new tour, which starts next Tuesday, I think. Tuesday, something like that. But you probably tried to get tickets through Ticketmaster, and you may have heard that Ticketmaster was not doing a good job. The overwhelming demand brought down the ticketing site, and scalpers or, resellers who were able to get their hands on them listed them for anywhere from like $350 for like the farthest seat in the auditorium, all the way to $35,000 for floor tickets. While the Department of Justice is investigating Live Nation, who owns Ticketmaster, for like antitrust, all that, the whole Taylor Swift Ticketmaster debacle is simultaneously unrelated but related. Like they're not being investigated for the Taylor Swift stuff, but the Taylor Swift stuff is not helping Live Nation's case. Aaron, what did you think of this entire debacle?
Yeah, I mean, I learned a lot about Ticketmaster this week. Like, I had no idea they owned more than 70% of ticketing and live market, like live
wild.
event market transactions. Like, that's way more than 50. They've had dominance clearly in this thing. I mean, my first thought specifically related to Taylor Swift was like, okay, now is a great time to see whether, Swifties or K-pop stans are better at political action. Because one thing with this is that the Swifties all did want to have the Department of Justice break up Ticketmaster.
Yeah.
And it did remind me, like, the last time I heard about any kind of group doing anything political was K-pop stans when they tried to tank a Trump rally in Tulsa. They had fake reserved all these seats, and so then the real turnout was much less. But kind of interested in seeing how pop culture fans like mobilize in real life for like legislation.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think it's important to note that they can't really, like Swifties can't really like organize against Ticketmaster in the sense that they can't break it up. It's really up to the Department of Justice, but it will be interesting to see like how I'm sure they'll come up with like a way to like fight back or like.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading about it. I think the approach right now is, everyone in their local states email your representatives and have them do something in Congress to break up, like, basically egg on the DOJ to break up Ticketmaster. So it was like that kind of approach. I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, it goes into the other half of the problem, which was, so Live Nation bought Ticketmaster in like 2019. And for those of you who don't know, because I didn't know this, Live Nation, they manage the artists, right? They help negotiate business deals on behalf of the artists, their personal representatives. So like it's like Taylor Swift's manager. And then Ticketmaster does ticket sales to events. And they have this practice where they bully venues if like a venue tries to use any other kind of like ticket service, like maybe like Eventbrite or something like that. Then Ticketmaster will come in and be like, well, fuck you. We're not going to sell you the rights to Taylor Swift's store anymore. Like, you're not going to be the venue.
Whoa.
Right. And so everyone knew that Ticketmaster was doing this. So when Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged, the Justice Department was like, all right, y'all can merge, y'all can get married, but you can't do that bullying stuff anymore because that's bad. And they were like, all right, We promise. But the CEO has said, like, no, we still do it. So the other problem is the Department of Justice. Because, like, why did you guys think that was okay?
Yeah, it's true. Because, like, even if on people's side, right, like, even if they're asking the DOJ to break Ticketmaster up, like, the DOJ was the one who allowed for the merge to begin with. So I'm like, are they really going to change their minds? Like, I don't know. I think the other thing that people could do besides trying to write to their local, politicians is also just boycott Ticketmaster in general. But with what you just mentioned with Ticketmaster partnering with all this, big talent, it does seem a lot harder. But I feel like that is the other thing that people could try in terms of like direct action.
I mean, like, I feel like that's not even going to be hard because no one was able to get tickets.
Yeah, that's true. Dude, we've been boycotting Ticketmaster already. That's
yeah, like against our will, but like, yeah. I mean, it's kind of like the whole World Cup thing that we discussed last week, right? Like, I don't know what can be done about that because, like, in regards to like the most the governments can do is like speak out, but they need the money. So in regards to like their foreign workers that are being abused, all that stuff, I think it'd be on the athletes that come from those nations like Pakistan or India and the Philippines. There's the Philippines in the World Cup to speak out. And in the same way, I think it's kind of like on Taylor Swift to like say something, because I feel like Taylor Swift is at that level where she can bend the music industry to her will. You know what I mean? Like, there was a whole thing in like 2014 when she removed all her music from Spotify and it was like gone for like 3 years, and then in 2017 her music was back, and it's because some people speculate this hasn't been confirmed, but Spotify adopted a policy that basically satisfied her. So in a similar way, every single artist who works with Live Nation or who uses Ticketmaster has to be the one to initiate like the boycott. Yeah. I mean, like, it's kind of hard, right? Because I feel like when I was researching for this piece, I saw that like the boycott goes back to like the 90s with Pearl Jam. I was like, Pearl Jam? Like, last time I heard Pearl Jam was like on Guitar Hero. And like they were having trouble with like the whole monopoly and Ticketmaster and ticketing. I don't even know what Pearl Jam is. Oh, it's a rock band. It's okay, man. Okay. Yo, when I heard that, I'm like, this sounds like something that would happen on SpongeBob, because like Mr. Krabs' daughter is Pearl. Yes. Pearl starts her own band, Pearl Jam. Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh, yeah. That's true. So on the fan side, they can email their legislators, congressmen, and not go to any events that use Ticketmaster. But it is on the artist to also say no to Live Nation and Ticketmaster's like bad business practices. Yeah. I mean, I will say, if I had to pick the U.S. government or Swifties in a fight, I would pick Swifties every time. Yeah, for sure. I think about that one. Do you remember this? In like 2019, there was like this, I think it was a parody account, but it was like legit Tay updates. And she said something like, sorry, I haven't been posting in a while. I was in prison. And people were like, why were you in prison? And she was like, oh, I didn't want to serve in the IDF. Oh, yeah. I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. That went pretty hard. I respect that a lot. Prison for like 2 years, right? It was a really long time. Yeah. She's. I remember like reading. Vice did an interview with this person, and apparently they were like, yeah, like I grew up in Israel, but like when I was 16, I made friends with like a Palestinian person, and like that changed my whole, like yeah. And I was like, all right, go Swifties. That should be a movie. Yeah. Yeah, I think it should be. Yeah. All right, and moving on to our last topic, we are talking about a different piece of legislation, the Respect for Marriage Act. The headline specifically that we're talking about is Mitch McConnell votes against interracial marriage despite Asian wife. For those of you who don't know, Mitch McConnell, he is the, I think, leader of the Republicans right now in Senate. He is married to Elaine Chao, who was Donald Trump's Secretary of Transportation, and I think that's the amount of background we need for this at the moment. Jerry, what is one thought you had on this whole situation? All right. I feel like, yes, bad. But I feel like he's probably voting more against an opposition of same-sex marriage, which, like, yes. Like, still bad. And it's hilarious to me that interracial marriage is on the same level as, like, same-sex marriage in these people's minds, given how much same-sex marriage is, like, demonized. You know what I mean? Like, that's really wild to me. I imagine, Aaron, imagine your kid comes home and they're like, Mom, Dad, I have someone to introduce to you. And they bring home a white person. I mean, like, I kind of, and I know I'm going to get canceled for this, but like, I kind of get what like the reaction homophobes have, which is like, I feel like I failed my kid somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of the reaction I had in regards to just like thinking about, oh, they see interracial marriage and same-sex marriage on the same level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess just for background, I don't think I explained that clearly before. So the Respect for Marriage Act, it's like a very broad protection for marriages, whether for like race, gender, religion, probably. It just
Sure.
like it's like a general
it's just
protection.
protections. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's confusing. It's definitely confusing because it sounds Respect for Marriage Act kind of sounds like it's Republican.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
I was a little confused when I was reading.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wait, we are for the respect for marriage.
Yeah.
Right.
But what
okay.
do you mean like respect? It's like respect going back to like traditional values and stuff like that.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
What did you think?
It is hard. No, I was gonna be like it does seem like Mitch McConnell's voting against it more for the same-sex marriage aspect. It was like, oh, they have to choose between like they're either homophobic or racist, most likely both, but like one's winning out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this overall was more for just calling out like Republican hypocrisy, because overall, I guess the good news is that the bill did pass in the House and Senate overall, so most likely it'll be passed. It's just more funny to just call this out. Like, you're literally in an interracial marriage, but voting against it. Yeah.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like voting either for or against it feels antithetical to Republican values in the sense that, one, it feels kind of like a complete waste of time, and two, like, who is the government to tell me, like, why is the government meddling in this, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
I feel like a true Republican would abstain, actually.
Yeah. That's true. Wait, that's a really good point. I have nothing to say besides that's true. But again, I mean, in general, it's like, Republican hypocrisy, or like kind of voting against their own interests sometimes, or stances, is not too surprising to me overall.
Yeah, what would happen if like that didn't, like, if his own marriage got like overturned? Like, what happens?
To be fair, I've never really seen them together that often. So
That's true.
Like,
That's true. I've never seen a picture of them together.
Yeah, like, I know they're married,
holding hands.
but like, yeah, I've never seen them do anything with each other, like even talking.
You never see Mitch McConnell and Elaine Chao in the same room. Interesting.
Interesting. It's like that whole Donald Trump and Ivanka, meme.
Ooh, I don't like that.
No, wait, not Ivanka, Melania.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I'm confusing the people. Yeah,
we've already forgotten who they are. No, I remember there was like that whole conspiracy that like there was like a time where he wasn't standing, like that wasn't actually Melania. Do you remember that? Like, that was a weird fever dream.
That's what I was trying to reference, like fake Melania.
Yeah.
Like in this case, it's like either fake Mitch or fake Elaine right now. But
yeah, it just feels. I look, as a queer person, I am happy that we have codified gay marriage and interracial marriage. It's just like, we talked about an island that was gonna sink under the water. Like, don't you guys have more important things to do? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. And that is the episode for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you want to support us, you can find us on social media, on Instagram at Politically Asian Podcast, and on Twitter, RIP, at Politic Asian Pod. I think, honestly, the better way to support us right now is to give us 5 stars on Apple, especially Apple, because, those reviews are harder to get. And if not Apple, then on Spotify. All right. Thanks for listening, and bye.